And I need to get air conditioning in here. I've been sitting here for about 20 minutes trying to confuse this autofocus. And it's pretty good. It can get confused. This lens that I have, breathes like a mother, but, I don't have to use that lens. But all in all, it's pretty good. I mean, would you trust this autofocus for this kind of a shot, for the sit-down corporate talking head type of a thing? And I think I would. I think it's definitely good enough for that. So the Sony FX6, and sorry, I'm probably going to stare at my monitor the whole time here as I'm talking, because this is just off the cuff. I didn't really plan to make this, but I thought I'd get some of my thoughts down and share it all with you. The Sony FX6 is the best current cinema camera for commercial and corporate video work under $10,000. Full stop. I completely believe that's true. After these things have been out in the wild for a bit, friends of mine have bought them and used them for productions of all different types of sizes and documentaries and such. And the FX6 at $6,000 is the real deal, soup to nuts. I mean, it's, it has a great 4K sensor, very low megapixel, very good low light capability. It's got phantom powered XLRs on board. It has time code on board. It has SDI out. Has that cool variable built-in electronic ND filter that you can just set to auto and define your exposure value, and it'll kind of keep it there. So why then did I order one and then cancel it? Because this is the type of work that I'm looking to do more of. Things for which the FX6 would be very well suited. But the more I got to think about it, and the more I took a look, especially at the other cameras that are very similar to the FX6 out there, the less attractive the FX6 became to me. And so I decided to cancel my order. The first problem with the FX6, to me, and this certainly is going to be true to everybody, okay, is even though it is the best cinema camera under $10,000 and all that other stuff I just said, and I will take that to the grave, currently that is the case, there's a value problem there, because a lot of what the FX6 is, you can purchase for half as much by buying the A7S III or the FX3. I have an A7S III, and A7S III is a fantastic camera. I don't mean, by what I'm going to say, I don't mean to be taking anything away from that, but the sensor is not that good. And by that I mean it is not a very detailed sensor. Sony's real design criteria, I think, for the sensor in the A7S III, FX3, FX6 was for it to be a very sensitive, low light monster of a sensor. So they only gave the thing 10 megapixel or, whatever the spec is. Just enough megapixels really to render a 4K image, a 4K DCI image. But by doing so, they shoehorned themselves into not being able to get any of that nice oversampled detail that some of the other larger megapixel Sony sensors have. Even the A7 III, which is a few years old now, I also have one of those, will render a more detailed 4K image than the A7S III, because it's downsampling, the image from a 6K readout. It's a 24 megapixel camera. 6K is roughly 21 megapixels or so. You need it. So it downscales that into the 4K image that is more detailed than the A7S III. I've had them side by side and actually done this, and you can tell the difference. Different than artificial sharpening. That's a whole nother conversation. And obviously the A7 III is an 8-bit versus the 10-bit, and we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about just resolution and detail of the 4K image coming off the sensor. It is more detailed, the A7 III. For the same reason, the FX9, the FX6's bigger brother, is more detailed than the FX6 or the A7S III or FX3 because it is doing the same thing that the Sony A7 III is it has a 6K sensor that it's downscaling. I think until you go to higher frame rate, then it goes to a 5K crop and, whatever it's doing. But the A7S III sensor, which is, looks to be the same one that they use across several bodies, is good at what it does, kind of. Honestly, I've been a bit underwhelmed by the noise performance of it. I think between about ISO 1600 and until that second native gain stage on the sensor kicks in at 12,800, it's pretty noisy. I mean, it's borderline unusable. And then when you go to 12,800, there is a difference. There is a difference between that footage and the native ISO 640 footage that you can see. You don't have as much latitude in the grading. It's kind of, there's a color shift there. It shifts a bit warmer, than the native lower gain stage does. So, it looks okay. I mean, you can deliver. I deliver projects with it all the time. Shooting interiors, and sometimes I got to go up to that 12,800 and stop down my lens usually, to get my exposure right. Because then we're cranking the ISO, and you can make it passable, and nobody's going to know except for you, because you know what the rest of the footage looks like at the lower base ISO. So anyway, as it pertains to the FX6, I already have that camera. That's really what it came down to. Is I have that camera as the A7S Mark III, and it costs about $3,000 less than the FX6. The advantages the FX6 give over the A7S III, and it's not all advantage, by the way. I mean, there are advantages the A7S III has over the FX6. The focusing system is a little bit better in the A7S III as it pertains to the tracking autofocus. It has sensor stabilization in body that the FX6 does not. So, I mean, there are things that the A7S III are better than the FX6 with as well. But as it pertains to the features the FX6 has over the A7S III, the big one that you can't get away from is that variable ND filter, and that is cool. I mean, I would definitely enjoy having that. Is it worth paying twice as much? To me, no, it's not. So I'm going to take that one off the list of something that would be cool, but I don't need to have. The second thing is the XLRs. So the full-size XLRs with phantom power that I'm not going to beat the dead horse about the handle that needs to be removed. Everybody gets it. But it's something the FX6 has that the A7S III does not. FX3 has it, and it is easily remedied by the K3M module, which I've been trying to get a hold of one for a while, and they've been backordered for a while. It gives you a couple XLR inputs with phantom power on it. So I'm going to take that one off the list too. Next one, SDI out. I don't care. It's got a full-size HDMI. SDI is a better connection. I have SDI on other camera bodies, and I like, as soon as you use SDI, you realize how dumb HDMI is, because it twists and it locks, and it's just a better connection. But there's full-size HDMI on the A7S III, and that's good enough for me. So I'm going to get rid of that one. There's timecode, but I use the tentacle boxes. I'm not right now. I'm filming this with a Zoom F6, which is giving phantom power to my microphone, and then I'm just plugging that into the mini jack on the camera I'm using. But I use tentacle boxes to sync timecode. So really, when you take a look at the FX6, that's most of the things that, now we're just left with what essentially is an A7S III without stabilization, and with a little bit worse of a focusing system. With the exception, the FX6 I think has a face-only priority autofocus feature, which I think is cool. I wish they could do that with the other ones, but they need to differentiate it somehow, I guess. So it's just not worth it to me, But what I ended up doing, and it's a clue if you've seen what resolution this is in right now, is I bought an A1. So I canceled my FX6 order and I bought an A1. And why did I do that? The A1 is a camera that it is really hard to find a fault with, the A1. Except for the obvious fault, it is insanely expensive for what it is. It's more than the FX6, right? But as a interiors photographer and videographer, the A1 in that $6,000 price point is a better use of my money. And here's what I was hanging my hat on. I have been using as my primary stills body for the past few years, past couple years, I guess, since it came out, the A7R4. Before that, I was using the A7R3 and the A7 III. A7R4 is a fantastic camera, 61 megapixels. It is slow. It's slow wirelessly tethering to an iPad. The files are huge. Buffer is slow. It has that annoying quality that a lot of the Sony bodies have, where you have to wait for the buffer. You can't change a setting. Some things you can, some things you can't change while the buffer's writing, right? So it's just slow. And I shoot about 300 homes per year, residential real estate. And, when you're in the groove and you're working and you're bracketing and you're flashing and, and all that, to have to wait for even just a few seconds for that image preview to come up on your iPad, or for the buffer to clear, so you can change a setting or something like that, it can really slow you down, and it doesn't seem like a big deal. It doesn't seem like a long time, but in the context of that kind of workload, it really adds up, So I was hoping, since the A1 was built for speed, this is Sony's Olympics camera, right? And it was, they were the beneficiary of the Olympics getting delayed a year because they could finalize their design on the Alpha One and get it to market. So I was hoping that since this thing is built for speed, one of the things that it would have is faster throughput than the A7R Mark IV. It is a slightly less resolution of a sensor. It's 50 megapixels versus 61, I think the R4 is. But, I'm hoping that the architecture of the A1, the CF Express Type A cards, the Wi-Fi rating, just everything about it, it's really meant to push a lot of information through the body quickly. So that's what I was hoping for. The other thing, obviously, that the A1 has is 8K video recording, which is what I am doing right now. This is my very first time trying to use the 8K recording on the Alpha 1 body. And this is S-Cinetone, so it is not recording log. I'm destroying the image a little bit with a with a ProMist filter. I think it's a quarter stop ProMist filter, and I've got a variable ND filter in a map box on it, so I could shoot, I think I'm at like f2, 50 millimeter. This is the Sony Zeiss 50 1.4 planar that I'm using. And I mean, this is really rudimentary. I used like a notepad to capture white balance with its tool. It looks a little warm to me. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like when I get it back. And like I'd said, the audio is my microphone is the Schoeps CMC1 small diaphragm condenser, being powered and captured by the Zoom FX6. And I'm not recording to the Zoom though. I am just taking the 3.5 millimeter out, the headphone out, line out into the preamp on the Sony Alpha 1 body. So it's pretty simple setup. I'm not overthinking this. I wanted to test the 8K and see how it looks and talk a little bit about why I cancel my order for the FX6. It's because I think the A1 is the better use of $6,000, $6,500, unless you really want that variable ND. That's really that's the showstopper with the FX6 is the variable ND. But the sensor, I really do. I think it's mediocre. It gets the job done. I know a lot of people rave about the A7S III and the FX3, and I've had it now for, gosh, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, whatever it's been. It's okay, so we'll see. But anyway, my next video is going to be more in depth on the Alpha 1 versus the A7R4, and does it do what I bought it for? Is it a faster workflow? Is the buffer faster? Is the preview on a tethered iPad wirelessly through the camera's own app, the Sony Imaging Edge app, is that a faster throughput? Because that's important to me, and that is a test that I haven't seen anybody do. I've seen some resolution tests between it and the R4, and I'm going to discuss that too. Which camera's better at what, and there have been some surprises, regarding that. And my conclusion will be, would I buy it again, the Alpha 1? Am I going to keep it? Do I recommend people to buy it? Do I recommend real estate photographers to buy the Alpha 1? And, here's the thing. If we were talking about a $3,000 camera, then that'd be easy. I'd say yes. Buy it. But we're talking about a $6,500 camera that's only like that big, right? So that could give a lot of people pause. It did me for a while. So anyway, that's all coming your way right now. Going to sign off. I'll see you again soon.